Okay, so this is a tier list comprising of all 166 pets in Super Auto Pets. That's right, there's so many pets in this game, and I decided to rank them all. I already made the tier list, so I can quickly go through every single one of them. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up from the top to, like, I guess some qualifications for, like, reasoning behind making this tier list. I have won a couple of tournaments. I've played this game for probably like 1,000 hours. I've won 11 in a row in arena. I'm fairly good at this game, but that being said, there's still going to be a lot of things that are probably going to be wrong, just because there's so many pets in the game, and most of my experience is probably just with standard pack. I have played like the weeklies, customs, I've played everything, but the majority of my time is with standard pack. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Starting in F tier, I think some of these animals are pretty much never buys: Jerboa, Porcupine, and Crab. Crab got nerfed to the ground, only 50% of its HP now, and you have to get it to level 2 to even be useful. I just don't really think it's worth it anymore. And Porcupine, so the sad part about Porcupine is that it has to trade with the unit and neither unit has to die, which actually very rarely happens. And also it only deals 6 damage, which might not even be significant enough to kill anything. It's also a tier 4. Like, Porcupine could easily deserve a buff or like even become a tier 3, and it's still a pretty bad pet. Jerboa, the problem is trying to feed an apple to this thing, it's like impossible. Your chances of seeing an apple are so small in the shop, and like, why would you invest a whole bunch of money just to use it like once? You can sell a mouse with it, but then, I mean, that's also a pretty rare occurrence to find those in the shop. Overall, it's just not very good with the food build. Like, you can try to go Squirrel Jerboa, I've tried it in the past, doesn't really work. Other food builds way superior. Alright, in D tier, Cockroach is a pretty bad tier 1. I don't think it's really ever worth taking. It has a capped attack. Like, the only reason to really take it is just like, I don't know, a 2-4, but it takes a turn before it actually gets 2 stats. So I just don't recommend Cockroach. Dirty Rat, sadly, is really awful. Like, you can try to make it work with Hippo or something to get that 1 extra trigger, but trying to get it to like actually be a useful unit is really hard, and most of the time it's not worth investing into. Frigate Bird, I don't even know how to say this thing. Like, it's just pretty much a never buy. Like, if it's +2 health or random hurt ability, that's pretty much nothing. Not really worth investing, and it's a pretty bad unit. Okapi is temporary stats, so if you roll a lot, it sounds like it would be good, but I mean, in reality, you don't want to roll that much. Like, it's not a great idea, and it falls off in scaling real quick, so not really worth it. Cassowary, I mean, if you're gonna go strawberries, it's at least some scaling. If you get like early cassowary, you can have strawberries, maybe it's worth taking, but overall, I think it's one of the weakest strawberry pets in the game. Rhino, sadly, is just like terrible. There are so many better ways to counter summon builds, mostly like Hippo, sniping teams, that kind of thing, and Rhino just does not accomplish his job. Even if you manage to run into a summon team, it probably won't kill anything because it doesn't deal a ton of damage, or it's just going to trade and never get its ability off. Eel is pretty awful. Like, its ability is to just gain health, but most of the time that's useless in the end game once you actually start getting it scaling. And yeah, just a very minimal effect that's not really worth investing into. Duckling, so moving on to C tier. I'm going through these pretty fast, but I decided I don't want to spend an hour on this. I want to get through this pretty quickly. Duckling, it's okay if you get like 3 of them. It kind of costs you early lives because it's a 1-2, which is not really worth it some of the time, like if you're doing arena. But then if you do get a good tier 3, like maybe, I mean, Camel or something, you can buff it and get some extra health, which is kind of nice, but usually not worth it. Mouse also I don't think is very worth it. Like, it can kind of go with Ladybug. If you happen to have a bunch of Ladybugs, have like 3 gold left over, you buy it, you sell it, you get to buy it next turn. It's an apple for 2 gold technically, so it's a little more efficient. Not the worst in the game, but it's not very good. Frog, very limited use. I mean, it's pretty rare to actually get a frog in there in the team and make it work, but it can work. It has a purpose. Like, the things in C tier have purposes. And if you get a level 2 frog, you can swap the stats. You know, if you have like a, I don't know, a beaver or something, you can swap stats to a leopard and instantly get it to be pretty solid. But that requires 9 gold in order to do that, and it's kind of tough to just keep it on your team for that long. Dove, so when it faints, it gives +2/+1 to a strawberry pet. It sounds pretty solid. Like if you somehow have 2 strawberry pets, you can pill a dove and get +2/+1 to 2 things, but that just pretty much never happens. You usually only have 1 strawberry pet, so it's not great scaling, but you know, maybe it can work in some situations. Horse, I think, is one of the weakest tier ones. I mean, it can kind of work in the early game before Garlic's unlocked. You get like Horse, Cricket, Horse, Spider, and that's okay as a start, and it does lose to like Mosquito Snipes and stuff, but it's not too bad. If you happen to get stuck with Horse, you can sometimes take it. Bear is a weird unit. You can kind of use it as a suicide to like replace any equipment with honey, but most of the time you don't want to keep it into the late game. And the only reason to take it is because it's a 3/5 or something like that, or if you somehow have got stuck with Horse, but usually not something you want to keep on your team. Badger also got nerfed into the ground with Crab. Its ability is now cut in half. So it's really like you have to get level 2 in order to have any chance, and then you got to get scaling with like a penguin or something. It's usually not worth investing. It still gets countered really easily by Croc, and overall just not that great. Peacock, it's okay tempo for a tier 2. It's a 2/5 that like suddenly can become a 6/4 if it gets hit by like a mosquito snipe or with an elephant or something. I don't usually invest in Peacock. I think it's a bit overrated, and I think most of the other tier 2s are much better, especially for the late game. Puffin, it sounds like a fun unit. It's a sniper on tier 2 with strawberries, but again, most of the time you only have 1 strawberry. And it might deal some damage, but it falls off real quick. Its ability also, it doesn't level up well because it just hits 1 unit, so it's not even good for like melon popping later on or anything like that. Armadillo, sadly its ability just does not give enough stats. It's just +1 health, and it usually dies very quickly, so not really worth investing into. Wombat requires your opponent to have a feint ability. Anything that relies on your opponent is usually not that good, because you can't really determine what's going to happen on their team. So if you're relying on your opponents, then half the time you're probably just going to have no ability, and that's not very good. Komodo is probably the worst scaler in the game, just because it mixes up your positioning. Like sometimes that's okay, but like most of the time you do care about positioning, and it's only +1/+1 to 4 things. It's not super amazing. Like if you have no other option, then maybe it's worth taking, but usually not very good. Hyena, the level 1 ability of swapping all the stats usually isn't very helpful. Level 2 swapping all positions can be helpful against like certain teams, but again, you're really betting on them having like a summon team or something like that, and so half the time it might not be super useful, and also it requires level 2, so again, same thing with Frog. You don't usually want to invest that much money. It's better to just have a unit with a consistently good ability. Piranha kind of has a similar problem with Armadillo. It's a 10/2, so most of the time it's not going to get hurt anyway. Like, it has the feint ability as well. It's hurt and feint. Everything gets +2 attack. But, like, that's just a worse mammoth, because it usually dies in 1 hit. Orangutan, its stats mostly just get wasted, because it buffs the weakest thing on your team, and most of the time the weakest thing on your team is just going to be sold, so its stats are just kind of wasted. I honestly think this might be the worst skill in the game. Probably. It's probably worse than Komodo. I could change my mind if I want to. Sure, let's put it below Komodo. Green Beetle, so it's not that bad. I don't know, I could probably put it in B tier, to be honest. It's a 2/3, but its ability is not very good. Like, you used to be able to kind of go with like drawn beetle strats, which maybe you can do something to like buff the shop units, but overall, most of the time, it's not worth actually feeding the beetle to increase stats by like 1 or 2 health. Praying Mantis. So it's an interesting and very unique unit. It's like a pill for free, but the problem is you have to like build your entire team around it, and it can be pretty tricky. Its scaling is not super fast. Sadly, its stats are kind of skewed, and just overall, it's a fun unit, but it's really not worth investing into. I think it also kind of requires you to run a 4 squad for the most part, and that's just, it's not very good. Fox also got heavily nerfed. It used to double the food ability, but now it doesn't do that until level 2. So now it's no longer really worth taking with the food build. It used to be a very fun unit, but now not so good. Polar Bear, it's just a bit too late. Tier 5, like when you're freezing things in Tier 5 is for multiple turns is pretty risky. So unfortunately, it doesn't actually get to use its ability too often. But, you know, if you happen to get like an early polar bear and you have something frozen and you have a good team, in that very specific situation, it can kind of work out. Cola, so Cola Yak, not that bad. I mean, it's not the greatest, I think, in the game, but if you're stuck with like no other options, right now the meta really focuses, at least in custom packs, around buy sell. So you kind of just got to go with that if you want to actually keep up with scaling. So it pales in comparison to that, but it is some pretty decent scaling. Alright, moving on to B tier, you'll notice most of the pets are in A and B tier. I think this game is fairly well balanced. Like, there's still a lot of bad pets in the game, but they make up a pretty small percentage. So, I mean, I think the devs have done a pretty good job with how they change everything, and I hope they continue to do it to make the game like fresh and interesting every time they balance change it. Guinea pig, so it gets some early levels. Like, there's really no other purpose besides that, because you know, it's terrible stats. Also, you have to have an open slot. But if you do happen to have like a dog or something, you know, double the stats, and it only costs 1 gold because you get to sell 2 things. Or if you're in desperate need of like a level up, although usually that doesn't work out very well either. Overall, not great, but it's part of the buy sell meta, so that makes it like somewhat playable. Hammer Shark, it sounds like it's great, plus 3 gold for a level 3. But most of the time on tier 6, your team's kind of full. It's pretty rare where you just have a slot. It's like, oh, I can just put a Hammer Shark in. Most of the time you got like 2 scalers and like 3 good units by that point. But if you do happen to have a level 3, maybe you'll take it for a couple turns. Usually it's just you pivot out of it though. Dromedary, if you happen to high roll dromedaries, just get a whole bunch of them, then you can kind of make them work, and you'll get like, you know, +2, +2, +3, +3 if you have like 3 a turn, and that's pretty solid. But that does require you to kind of high roll them, but it still has a purpose as long as you get enough of them. Hedgehog, Blowfish, Hedgehog, Camel, you know, it's early game, it's pretty good. Like, it certainly can win you those early rounds. You just gotta probably pivot off of it pretty quickly, because it's pretty tough to win unless if you super high roll all the things you need. Tabby Cat, just all around solid stats. I think if you go like Ladybug, Tabby Cat, you can kind of win some early rounds, but it's not super useful, and you usually also want to sell it pretty quickly. Stork is just like an okay summon unit. It's a tier 2, and it's kind of RNG, but if you happen to need a summon, it's not bad, and you never know what you're gonna get. It kind of scales with the shop. Like, I remember if you're at tier 6, it can summon like a scorpion or like an eagle or something. So, I mean, usually you don't want to keep it for that long, but it's a pretty interesting unit. Boar, sadly, the stats, like, it has a ton of attack, but most of the time you're not going to get to use its ability too much because it's going to die pretty quickly, just because it has low health, only gains +2 before attack. So most of the time it dies pretty quickly. Not even a great summon counter. Like, Hippo, I think, is a much better summon counter. Swordfish is a very fun unit, but sadly, it's just like sacrificing your own unit is not really great for your team. Who would have thought? Like, yeah, you can put a pepper on it, or you could go like Tiger Swordfish and really try to make it pop off, but you're investing so much into getting the stats on that, and then it's going to die in one hit. It's just very risky, and I think most of the time it's not worth going for, but occasionally it's a very cool and occasionally helpful unit. Elephant, so like Elephant Camel, Elephant Blowfish, it can work. You just have to get a lot of good things going. You probably need level 2 Elephant, you probably need Melon Armor, and you probably want like level 2 Camel, level 2 Blowfish. So you're gonna need to kind of high roll as well, but it can work and can be pretty strong. Panda, it's a weird tier 2. The problem is later game, like, it's just a empty slot. You're pretty much running like a 4 squad. But in the middle game, you have a level 2 Panda, you can get some pretty strong units just instantly, which is pretty good. Still, wouldn't really recommend taking Panda too often. Sabertooth, it's got a hurt ability at tier 6. Most things do not last for very long. Like, you have to be pretty lucky to not like get one shot. And its ability at level 1 is only an 8/8, which isn't going to make a huge difference, sadly. Pig is just for buy sell. It's a solid buy. It's got 4 attack, 1 health, gets countered by Mosquito. But if they don't have Mosquito, you know, it will trade, and then you can just like sell it and get the things that you want later. So it's not too bad. Aardvark is a summon counter. Also, if you go like Aardvark Dirty Rat or Aardvark Bear, it gains +2, +3, which is solid stats for a tier 2. It's again kind of just like dependent on your opponent's team, or just like, I don't know, just fairly inconsistent and not something you want to keep around for too long. Gorilla, its ability sounds like it's amazing as a tier 6 to gain Coconut, but I mean, it's just like it's too late, really. Like tier 6s, they have to have a really good ability in order for you to invest in them, and most of the time that's going to be like leopard or something like that. And it's gorilla's usually not worth it, unless if you get maybe like early gorilla and you have like a monkey and you bottle some cans or something. I wouldn't really recommend going gorilla. Lion is also a strat that's like you don't really want to keep Lion. Like if you happen to get early Lion on like turn 7, turn 8, you can take it for a couple turns, but overall it's something you just keep around for a couple turns. Yeah, like I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself too much. All right, Blowfish. Blowfish, it's not bad. I mean, it can counter like Mosquito. You can go the elephant blowfish, you can go hedgehog blowfish. It's got some purposes. It can snipe melon, it can kill things. But again, its ability falls off pretty quickly. And so it's okay in the mid game, but usually want to pivot off of it if you can. Marmoset is pretty much the same thing as Pig, just like a 2-3. So you can buy it just to like hopefully sell it and then find something better in the future. Donkey, it can counter certain teams that have something really important in the back, shark, turkey, whatever it is, it counters those pretty well, so it's got a purpose, but again, that's only specific teams, and trying to build your team to counter like a specific team is not always a great idea. You usually just want to cover all your bases and try to counter like every team possible, so you just win consistently. Husky requires your board to have no food. Like, sometimes that can happen, but it's pretty rare. Usually you want to get garlic, melon, that kind of stuff, splash attack, so Husky doesn't end up being all that useful, but it is +4/+4 technically on tier 5 if you happen to have no food. Wasp, you gotta get like a level 2 Wasp, and then it'll scale itself pretty nicely to get to 50 attack, but it's still gonna have super low health. If you go like Wasp, Bell Pepper, it can kind of work, but I think there's usually better things, but it's not terrible. Pelican, it's only +2/+1 as a tier 4. It's a scaler, sure, but like most of the time I just pivot off of strawberries very early. You go with like Hummingbird, you go with like Kiwi, and then you just replace it on like turn 5 or something. Hippo is a pretty solid buff now, like it gets +3/+3 instead of +2/+2. So it can counter weak teams. Most of the time though, if like you hippo someone's team, you're gonna beat them without the hippo anyway. Like it just kind of beats weak teams, which is why it's not higher. And I mean, really strong summon teams are gonna be able to probably kill your hippo anyway. So it's a bit rough. I mean, maybe you have like a 50-50 hippo with lemon, you can counter summon teams in the end, which isn't bad, but again, trying to build your team to specifically counter one thing is not great. You usually want to try to just beat all teams. So, Bat is great late game, which is weird because it's a tier 2. Its weakness can really come in handy, replacing like melon, 1-ups, steak, whatever it is. But the thing is, you have to keep it on your team for a really long time, and it's not super helpful early on, when most people don't have really helpful equipment. So it's kind of a late game investment, but if you do happen to keep a Bat on your entire team, it's very helpful later on. Sauropod is nice with food builds, but a lot of times you don't actually have room because it's a tier 6, so you probably already got like squirrel, seal, or like hopefully you get like cat seal is better. So it's just like, it's a bit late and I don't always take sauropod, so it's still not a bad food meta type of thing. Fish, it's an okay scaler. It's only got a 2-2 now, so it's actually a little bit lacking in stats. I wouldn't go fish too frequently, but if you have no other option, I think it's fine. Like most tier 1s are okay takes. Alright, moving on to the hamster. Hamster is an interesting one. If you do happen to go with buy sell, getting those free rolls is pretty nice. It's certainly pretty good economy. I mean, 2 extra gold a turn is just very helpful, but it's a tier 5. It's got pretty bad stats. You have to have room for it. It's a take in certain situations, but it's also like a don't take in a lot of situations. Still, if you do happen to have room for it, it's very nice. Kiwi is +1/+2 for a strawberry pet, so just great scaling early on. To just buy, sell a Kiwi, 3 stats for 2 gold. I mean, that's pretty efficient, but it does require you to go strawberry, of course. And, yeah, usually you just want to pivot off of it, but not a bad tier 1. Sheep is okay tempo. You don't really want to keep sheep for too long, but it's like a 6/6. Kind of gets countered pretty hard by garlic, but you happen to get like an early sheep on turn 3 or 4, usually you just want to take it and then sell it like a little bit later. Yak is okay scaling with koala, or cola, sorry, I always mispronounce it. But yeah, it hurts itself, which means you got to keep it alive, and wouldn't really recommend it. I mean, it's hard to recommend anything besides like buy sell these days if you're going with custom packs. If you're playing like pack 3, maybe it's a pretty solid scaling, so you can go for that. Toad is pretty interesting. You go like Toad Woodpecker, you go like Hedgehog Woodpecker. Just weakness early on can be pretty helpful, and I mean it's helpful in certain situations. It's not super amazing though, because it does require them to get hurt. So if they have like Melon, you're not going to give them weakness later on. So you know, helpful in the mid game, but maybe not the best later on. Of course, you could go like 1-up Hedgehog, and then it would inflict weakness. There's certain fun strats you can do with Toad. Raccoon is probably one of the most like troll units in the game, just stealing whatever food. It's pretty inconsistent because it's hard to predict like them having food, but if they do have food, and a lot of times that they do in the later game, it's kind of like investment like bats. You'll steal like melon or garlic or like steak, and that's pretty solid. You can also steal weakness, which is kind of sad if you happen to have like lionfish, so don't go lionfish raccoon. At least not in the front, but yeah, so not a bad unit. But it's pretty random. Worm is not great. I think getting early worm, if you have like rabbit, is okay, but like I normally do not take worm. I think it can easily get countered by like skunk as well. Requires some very good food RNG, like you really want a lot of cows and stuff like that. If you high roll it, it's really fast scaling, but you don't want to be like a 1-unit team, which is kind of what happens when you go worm. Cricket is just okay tier 1. You can go Cricket Kangaroo, and that's just early like game tempo, get you a lot of wins there. Get a lot of triggers off of the Kangaroo, especially if you have like a Melon. Melon Cricket is just like 3 shots off the Kangaroo, which is like +6/+6 or +12/+12 if it's level 2, which is really strong early on. Triceratops probably should not be this high. I gotta be honest, I don't know why it is this high. Like you can go Woodpecker Triceratops or something. I'm gonna go ahead and just move it down right now. It's not that good. I don't really recommend it. Hurt effects later on are usually just not worth it. Alright, Salamander is scaling as a tier 2. The problem is it's all attack, so that means you kind of like gotta lollipop it and do something like that. But if you do happen to have a good pack that's around Salamander, which gets stats for start of battle abilities, then it's pretty good scaling. And it can like work in weekly packs and stuff if it's built around it. Tapir is kind of a weird one because it now just summons anything on the team, which means if you want to like consistently summon something, you have to put it like second to last so that it summons whatever's in the back. But that kind of limits your options because then you can't really go like shark, turkey, like Spinosaurus, because then it might just summon those things. So it's a pretty random unit, but if you do happen to just like go with a Tapir Eagle, White Tiger build, that's actually just extremely good and like pretty nasty. Loses to snipes obviously, but like that's a solid late game option if you have no other options. Shoebill is the best strawberry scaler. It buffs all strawberry fens +1/+2, but it can be difficult to get a lot of strawberries because like your chances just fall off as the game increases or goes on, but it is very solid scaling. Camel is okay. It's you can go with like Leech Camel, Hedgehog Camel. +2/+2 is pretty solid. A significant buff, makes it actually playable, but you know, you want to sell it eventually. Dodo is a very mid-tier unit, I think, as a tier 2. If you get level 2, you get it scaling with like Penguin. You can go like Ox, Dodo, and it's not bad. It certainly can help out quite a bit, but it also loses to quite a few things. So it's just overall like solidly in the middle. Hummingbird is pretty good. If you want to go strawberries, then it's certainly the best like early game option, +2/+1. And yeah, if you're going strawberries, worth it. Mole it's like a targeted salad for 2 gold with the buy sell. So it goes great with buy sell, and I guess that's really just like all there is to it. Ant is good early game. You can also pill it for some permanent stats. It's overall just a pretty solid tier 1. I would recommend taking it a good portion of the time. Anteater is okay as tempo. It just summons things that are 2/1s and then they give +2/+1, so just a whole bunch of extra attack. It's a pretty good summon unit, but there's better ones, usually specifically Eagle, so that kind of overshadows, I think, Anteater a bit. Beaver is now a 3/2, which means it's actually one of the best stats for a tier 1, and I mean, you get to sell it for 2 free health, so it's a pretty solid tier 1. Velociraptor is the best late game strawberry thing because it's like one of the few ways to get coconut besides gorilla, so it's just instantly coconut, and that's very helpful because that trades very well. But unfortunately, like, strawberries in general just aren't really strong, so it's pretty hard to get to the super late game and actually be able to use it. But if you can, it's very helpful. Seagull is great with summon teams. It's also great to just have like a Seagull with melon and then you just get melons everywhere. But specifically, it's kind of weird and hard to invest in, and sometimes you just don't have room for it. The goat goes great with buy sell. If you happen to get like a chicken or something, goat really helps out. It makes it so much better that you can level it up and reset its triggers, so that it can make a turn just like, you can get so many stats on one turn by doing that, and it's very helpful for buy sells. Tropical fish, it's okay. I mean, it just gives health and it also makes positioning kind of weird. It's not a bad tier 3 scaler, but there are a lot of better scalers in the game. I'll just say that. Iguana, it can be pretty nice. It counters certain things. You get level 2 Iguana, it counters like Anteater, it counters Rooster, it counters Cricket, it counters Sheep. There's a whole bunch of things it can help out with, but it's got pretty low stats. It's a 1/3. You can go with like Seahorse Iguana to do some early damage. Not a bad tier 1. Toucan is just good tempo if you want to go like Toucan Bone Attack, but you gotta be careful later on because you can get like weakened and then it spreads weakness to other things. Usually don't want to keep it around for too long, but it's pretty good early game. Walrus is a pretty decent summon unit. I mean, just giving Peanut, it's very random. I mean, just like, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but as a Hail Mary to just give something Peanuts, pretty interesting and occasionally helpful. Leech, so you can go like Leech Camel, Leech Peacock, and that's very good scaling. I think it's pretty solid overall, but that's only gonna buff like a certain unit, and you gotta also find ways to scale other things. Woodpecker is just good early, mid-game. You get like a Woodpecker with Pineapple, that is a lot of damage. Like a level 2 Woodpecker with Pineapple, you do 4 damage twice, so you deal 8 damage to 2 things for a total of 16. That's pretty incredible in the middle game. Vulture is a good summon unit, or good summon team units, but it's not like super broken. I'm surprised that a lot of people think it is. You're only going to be doing 2 or 4 damage. You can like sure give it a Pineapple for up to 8 damage. You can try to go like Microbe Vulture, but like any summon team, it usually just ends up losing to any sniper teams, which is kind of a problem. Okay, so the Pug, it goes pretty well with the experience builds. So if you go with like Jellyfish, Clownfish, it works out pretty well. Just able to get like instant level 2s when you have it at level 2. It's a pretty solid unit, but it also is something that you usually don't want to keep around the entire time, but overall just pretty solid. Also a 5/2 that gives +1/+1. It's just good stats. Bluebird is a tier 1 scaler, but now it's random, so oftentimes it will kind of just be wasted. But still, a tier 1 scaler is just overall solid because you can like almost guarantee you're at least getting level 2, maybe even like a level 3, not too difficult. Dolphin, it counters specific builds, like whale builds, it can counter like kangaroo. It's got decent stats, it deals 5 damage, not bad as a tier 4, but usually just like a keep for a couple turns. Seahorse, it can kind of mess up some teams, but usually not. Usually just like okay with Iguana early on as a 2/3. Mammoth, it's okay to take a Mammoth, I think, and like just pill it if you can, but the chance of seeing pill is not super high. So overall, it's just like you take in certain situations when you have nothing else to take, but it's not bad. It gives stats and it's okay. Moving on to A tier though, finally the units that are actually like super good. So Swan, if you can get a bunch of Swans, you get level 2 Swan, you just have a significant gold advantage, 20% more gold. I mean, that's like, it also like, if you want to buy 3 things, you could triple the amount of rolls that you have. Overall, just extremely good if you can manage to get it, but at the cost of having bad stats now. It's a 1-3, so it can certainly cost you some early rounds, and you gotta be careful. You have to think that you already have a strong team, otherwise you're just gonna lose. Whale, it's alright for a summon team, but it can get easily countered. Like, Tiger, Whale, Deer is still pretty solid, but I think most of the time, if you're going summons, you probably want like orcas and tigers and stuff, so it's not super amazing. Capybara is pretty solid, just +2/+1 on tier 3. Just got to make sure you don't go too crazy, and actually buy the things and then just like sell them off. Or if you really like, if you do high roll, you get like lobster and you start really buffing things instantly, which is just super nice. Chinchilla. So, the chinchilla is just amazing buy sell. That's the only purpose. It like, dog, you get double the stats for 1 gold. It's just incredible efficiency, and that's the main purpose of it. You can even like, if you have a level 1 goldfish, you literally get like 2 stats for free, or 4 if it's like a level 2 dog. Owl, another amazing buy sell, just a random 2/2. You get like dog, you get starfish, you get like buffalo. Suddenly buy selling an owl just gives insane stats. Orca is great with summons, but anytime you go summons, you risk getting countered by sniping teams and stuff like that. So it's not like it's unbelievably broken, but if you happen to go against teams that are just like okay stats, then you can kind of crush them with summon teams. And that's pretty fun sometimes. Snake, it can crush summon teams. So it's a great counter, just snipes onto their team. If you go like Tiger Snake and you get a fly and you have something with melon, you get so many triggers that it'll probably crush their team, unless if they have really high stats. Platypus is just free stats if you have the space for it. So again, just great buy sell synergy, but if you don't have the space for it, you know, it's just not super helpful. Poodle is an okay scaler. You have to have the right team for it, and now it no longer buffs left to right, it just buffs things at random, which is a little worse. Also, it doesn't buff itself. So they significantly nerfed Poodle, so it's a pretty just like fair and balanced scaler now. Otter is pretty nice if you can get them early on, just able to get some early stats. They also changed Otter, so it no longer just makes 1 massive unit, which is why it was so good, because then you could just keep that unit around for a really long time, but now it spreads out the buffs quite a bit, and it's a pretty fair unit as well, but it's still pretty good. Reindeer is free melon, but it's got low stats, and it's a tier 6, so it's pretty tricky to actually get into your team, but if you have like cans and lobsters and you get like a reindeer, then that's just great, because it's just free melon. Rabbit is early on, just nice scaling. You buy a salad with a rabbit, you get +1/+2 to 2 things. If you have double rabbit and you buy a salad, you get +1/+3 twice, which is equivalent stats to pizza. But the problem is the stats can get wasted if they just hit a bad unit or something like that. But still pretty solid early on. Not so helpful in lobbies when everything gets to 50-50 anyway, and you kind of have to just catch up in the attack. But in arena and 1v1s, especially in 1v1s, I feel like it's actually just great. Lionfish has a great ability, replaces any equipment they have with weakness, so overall just very nice to have, but it's also tier 5, and a lot of times you don't have the space for it, but it's good as just like a last fill unit if you can get it. Duck, just a 2/3 with a solid ability makes it worth taking a lot of times. You get a duck, and like you get triple duck, you level up, you get something useful like a dog, and then you're just able to sell it and immediately give 2 health to it. And that's just very helpful. And it helps to not lose the early rounds with 2/3s. Ox is no longer super broken. Like, pulling stuff in front of Ox is still fun, still gives extra stats, but it no longer scales super fast. So it's just like pretty good, but you don't always want to keep it. You just, it's hard to get a ton of attack on the Ox now, but it's still free melon, and it's pretty solid. Dragon is okay if you have like a dog, or if you get early dragon and you've got no other scaling, you can sometimes take it, but I think there's a lot of other scalers that are much better nowadays. It's just like a pretty average scaler, but it's still a scaler, which makes it A tier. Lynx is just a great sniping team, like just instantly getting to kill things on other people's teams. You get a whole bunch of links. Level up ability is great because it shoots multiple times like the Leopard, and it's just a very solid sniping unit as a tier 4. Llama is, again, a pretty okay scaler. It requires you to have a 4 squad, which is a pretty significant disadvantage, but I mean, it is scaling and it buffs itself. It's tier 4. Early Llama, usually pretty helpful. Dragonfly, again, a scaler, but it requires you to really have a level 3 to fully utilize it. It does buff left to right, so you can actually control what you're scaling, which is nice. But if you don't have a level 3, it's more like a level 2 giraffe, but it's still something and it's not bad. Tamarin. So Tamarin can be a lot of fun, especially if you're able to high roll it. Like level 3 Tamarin means anything that you sell gets 150% boosted stats. Most of the time you're not really able to get that, you just go for level 2 Tamarin. But still, if you wait till like turn 9, you get the level up, you get a good tier 6, maybe get like reindeer or leopard or something like that, octo, then suddenly you can sell it and just immediately get good stats, so it can be pretty helpful. Mosquito is a great tier 1. It just has an ability where it can pop melon armor, and that can just be a game changer. Like, melon armor is just some of the best equipment in the game, so if you're able to pop it, it's a big difference. But it is a tier 1, and, you know, scaling it can be sometimes a little bit tricky. Sometimes you want to scale other things that are better, but most of the time, it's one of the best tier 1s to just stick around. Hawk is just like solid tempo. You can kind of choose where to snipe. You go front, you go back, can be pretty helpful, and just overall solid tempo option. Bison got nerfed, is now just a 4-4, which means it's not like super good anymore, surprisingly. Like, it kind of falls behind in stats if you don't get like early Bison or just immediately like a turn 7 Bison. It's not super good, and it requires you to have a level 3, which honestly doesn't happen super frequently. So it's a pretty okay scaler if you happen to have one, but otherwise, you know. Okay, Shrimp is great with buy sell. I mean, I've brought it up many times, but buy sell is kind of broken in this game. It just is able to scale so fast if you're able to just get the right units, and so if Shrimp is part of that equation, it's a tier 2, so you can get it pretty frequently, and it's just free stats. Jellyfish is great with a experience build. It actually is like one of the few things I think can like keep up with a buy sell build. If you're able to get like jellyfish, clownfish, it works out really well. You just have to get the level ups, and then, you know, it's pretty solid scaling in the mid game. Spinosaurus is a great tempo option. You're getting +3/+2 like 4 times at least, if not more if you have summons. And it's just great with summons, I think. It's also just a pretty fun unit. It's able to scale itself as well, so if you have a summon team, you're going to have like a 50-50 in the back, which is always nice. Kangaroo, just solid tempo option. Again, the Cricket Kangaroo is pretty strong, just like Kangaroo behind Ox or something. The Melon's also pretty nice. You want to probably sell it off eventually, don't want to keep it too long, because it's not so good in the end game. Pillbug is just great scaling. I mean, you get +2 health. It's like a beaver, but you get its trigger multiple times if you just keep it on the team. Like, you can get its trigger 5 times. You get it on tier 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's just extremely good stats for a tier 1. And so, yeah, just overall pretty solid. Deer is great. Just splash attack, 5 high splash attack can really deal a lot of damage in the middle game. And it's just overall a great summon unit to have. Like, you go parrot, deer, and suddenly you just win a lot of rounds. Turkey is not quite as good as it used to be. It's only +2, +3 now. Lobster actually is way better. It's a tier 4 with the same ability. It also works in battle, which is nice, but it's also, you know, it's good actually. It's just overall good for summons, but maybe, you know, not as broken as it once was. Crow is free experience. I mean, it's not free, it's actually super expensive. It's the opposite of free, really. It's 5 gold, but guaranteeing level ups is just really helpful. You can often get stuck at level 1.5, and that's just a big difference sometimes. So just being able to buy sell that crow to guarantee the level 2 is very helpful and makes it very good. It's also tier 4, so it's before you actually unlock chocolate. Micro can be very like just disruptive to people's teams. A lot of times equipment is super helpful, and if you have an unpilled turtle on your team, you'll have melon, they won't. It's just a big difference. You can also just deal a lot of damage with like Octo Microbe. A lot of good combinations. Vulture Microbe. But, you know, it's not unstoppable. It still will lose out to just like better stats or things with like good abilities and stuff like that. Fly is pretty nice for popping Melon. It's now only a 4/4. Also, its triggers can get wasted if you already have summons. So it's actually not very good in a summon team, but just as a last like minute fill for your team, it's just pretty good. Pops Melon again. T-Rex is a great scaler. For 3 gold, you get +2/+1 to 4 things. That is a lot of stats for just 3 gold, but it does require you to also have just kind of a bad unit on your team, because most of the time you're not buffing the T-Rex, but still, it's just a good scaler. Snail is a great comeback mechanic. It's no longer as broken as it once was, which is nice, but if you lose a round, it's always nice to just buy a Snail and get a little bit of a boost for your team. Ladybug is pretty strong early on. If you just get a bunch of ladybugs and suddenly you like buy food, you have some pretty crazy stats. There's also a strat where you give like 1 ladybug broccoli, you give another fried shrimp, and then you combine, and suddenly you have a massive ladybug. And like that will help you win the early rounds, and then you'll also have a big unit, so that can be pretty helpful. Lioness as a tier 6, it is shop scaling. You can get to 50-50 and get broken teams, but it's pretty hard. As a tier 6, like most of the time that's pretty late, and it can be kind of tricky, but occasionally you can just get some absolutely broken teams, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Tiger can be very important on some teams. So if you get like Tiger Octo, Tiger Leopard, those kinds of things, you can Tiger 1-up Octo and get a whole bunch of extra spawns. It's kind of broken with 1-ups. But yeah, it can make some teams just significantly better, which makes it a very strong unit. Spider Pill is actually just surprisingly amazing. Like most of the tier 3s, especially in custom packs, you can just stack the deck and make every single tier 3 pretty much worth it. So if you just pill a Spider, you're just guaranteed to get something helpful, and it's only 4 gold, and like getting those early tier 3s are a significant boost, because a lot of tier 3s are just a step above the tier 2s in terms of abilities and stats. So yeah, it's really worth it to pill spiders. Zebra is just great. It's a pizza for 2 gold on tier 5, so just incredible stats and efficiency. And if you have a buy sell team, it's just unbelievable how many stats you can get for cheap gold efficiency. Puppy is great for just scaling itself. It only costs 2 gold. You get early Puppy, it's a pretty significant advantage, I think, especially if you can get level 2 Puppy. Then suddenly you're scaling like crazy. But if you like just take a Puppy on turn 5, you gotta, I mean, it's questionable. It's a pretty nice scaler though, overall, on tier 3. Again, you can like pill a Spider, get a 2/2 Puppy on turn 3, and that's pretty strong. Ostrich is a great self-scaler. It can get to 50-50 real quick. The thing is, it doesn't have an ability, but still, just having a 50-50 on your team, it's pretty solid. Skunk is a great counter to specific teams. It's almost always helpful, except against summon teams. But yeah, it's just a great ability on tier 4, and it's a lot of fun as well. Getting level 3 Skunk, instant 1 health, you get to one-shot through Melon and stuff like that. Pretty cool. Moth is great early tempo. I probably shouldn't put it this high. I just really like Moth personally. You can make anything just like a 1/2 is normally so useless. You just have like Otter on your team, but suddenly it becomes a 4/2, and it's just like it's gonna trade with their biggest unit, and it's just, I mean, yeah, pretty solid overall. It does lose to Mosquito Snipes being a 2/1 though, so you gotta be careful of that. Rooster is amazing in lobbies, so if you play versus lobbies and you end up going to late game, you're going to be seeing a lot of Roosters and a lot of Leopards. Considering how good its ability is, and it's only a tier 4, which means you can like pretty consistently scale it pretty nicely, and that makes it like part of the meta for sure. It's not quite as helpful in 1v1s and in arena, but just because it's so broken in lobbies is the reason that it's in pretty high A tier. Scorpion, just a great counter to like something strong. If they just have a strong unit with garlic, it can be a game changer. Like suddenly you just go from being crushed to like, oh, I just won a round because of Scorpion. It can be kind of annoying to deal with like the positioning mix-ups, and it can die to like Splash and Dolphin, But yeah, it occasionally, even like a 1-up Scorpion to pop Melon and then trade with their biggest unit, it's pretty good. Croc is just an amazing counter to summon teams. You have a Vulture in the back, you have a Turkey in the back, you have like a Spinosaurus in the back, whatever it is, you get a Croc and suddenly you're just countering their teams hard. And also on level up now, it deals this ability multiple times, so it can also just punch through Melon, which is great. It's a lovely unit and it's just a lot of fun to just break people's teams. Squirrel is just a perfect food unit. It gives discounts. You get like a level 2 squirrel or a level 3 squirrel, you're getting super cheap food. And you combine that with like a cat or seal or something like that, and you're able to scale just so fast. It's kind of nuts. Frilled Dragon is just possibly the best early tempo. You get some ants, some crickets, and a Frilled Dragon, and it's just stats are crazy. For like the very early start of the game, it'll just like guarantee you wins. Parrot allows you to just pivot into anything. You get like a parrot to level 2, and then you get like a fly or like a shark or whatever it is, and you just have an immediate level 2 ability, which is just so helpful. Goldfish is just so good with buy sell. You get a level 2 goldfish, you're getting free stats, literally, and it can be like a chinchilla, then you get actually gold back, like level 3 goldfish, just gives you 2 gold a turn or even more. It's just pretty incredible considering it's a tier 2. Thing is, it's only a 1-2, so it can cost you some early rounds, so you gotta be a little careful about that, but usually just worth it to try to get a buy sell with the goldfish team. Octo is one of the best tier 6 abilities. It can pop Melon, it can just also deal a ton of damage. You get Tiger 1-up Octo, and you're just able to deal so much damage. It's kind of absurd, and so yeah, just overall a really strong tier 6. It's good at level 1, it's good at level 3. It's just like, there's not really much you can do to stop it. Cow is just nice. It's pretty similar to Zebra, except you get +2, +4, so a little less stats, but you get to target it, which is pretty nice. So a great buy sell there. Starfish is part of the buy sell squad, +1/+1 with a unit with the sell ability. If you have a custom pack that's built around it, then you're gonna get to use this ability a lot. And you get dog, you get buffalo, you get starfish, and you're scaling like crazy. Chicken is amazing in lobbies. You can also like sometimes get it in arenas and 1v1s and stuff like that. Just the shop scaling, it's a very fun unit, but it's too good in versus lobbies that the meta just revolves around it. It also fits so well into buy sells because you can buff the buffalo and the dog while you're shop scaling. Get 50/50 shops in like 5 turns. It's pretty nuts how quick you can get them. And yeah, then you just kind of win. Buffalo is amazing as a buy sell, just like +3/+3 a turn, or even +6/+6 a turn. They gave it a trigger limit, so it's no longer like S tier, but it's still a very nice scaler to have. And like early Buffalo is just a huge advantage if you can find it on turns 5, 6, 7, that kind of stuff. Caterpillar, it can be very nice, just able to get a copy of your strongest ability. Maybe not the best late game, but still, it's just like free level ups as well, and overall, pretty nice. Giraffe is actually surprisingly high. I feel like everyone just kind of takes Giraffe as a tier 3 now. It's just +1/+1, much better than Tropical Fish. It gives even stats to just 1 unit, also has higher stats than Tropical Fish, so overall just way better. And yeah, a solid tier 3. Moose is an incredible scaler. As a tier 5, you can get +5/+5, even +6/+6. It's just like, that's so many stats a turn. You compare it to Monkey, like level 2 Monkey gives +4/+6. Level 1 Moose can give that in a heartbeat. So it's just like so much scaling from the Moose. Of course, that does come at the cost of freezing your shop, but sometimes you can just like gamble a little bit and unfreeze your shop and then just start freezing towards the end and still get a lot of scaling. You know, it's up to you. You go Moose and like Seal, and you just need to buy food anyway, so it's really good. Hatching Chick, great early tempo option. I mean, +5/+5 is just so helpful in the early game. You're going to win a lot of rounds if you just have a Hatching Chick. And then you can also level it up, get level 2 for some permanent scaling. Why not? Leopard is one of the best counters to sniping teams. I mean, if you're able to scale a Leopard, there's no team that you're going to lose to. It can pop melons, it can kill things. It's just overall so good. Its ability is one of the best in the game, but it requires you to scale it, and that can be pretty tricky considering it's a tier 6. Shark is just a great ability. I mean, immediately it's +8/+8, assuming you just put it in the back. It can die to Crocodile and stuff, but that's just like a 12/12. You have more summons, like you get a fly in there, suddenly you get an extra +6/+6. It's kind of crazy how fast you can get like a 50/50 Shark if it's like level 2 and you have a summon team. It's just overall a solid tempo option. Eagle is amazing. Like you can pill Eagle, get an early tier 6, or you can just have an Eagle team with a summon team. It's like the best summon possible. There's a whole lot of RNG. You can get some crazy units out there. You can get like a octopus spawn, you can get orca spawns, you can get boars, walruses. There's just so many good things that it can spawn that it makes summon teams absolutely amazing. You put a 1-up on that eagle, you get double the spawns. Yeah, just super good with summons. And finally, we move on to S tier. So S tier Flamingo. Honestly, I don't think I've ever skipped like a Flamingo. It's so good. Like a 4/2 that gives +1/+1, plus you can also pill it for permanent stats, plus you can pill it in front of Ox for even more stats, or like a Shark or something. It's just honestly so good. Like it's good tempo, it's good permanent scaling, you get targeted permanent scaling. Like it's one of the best tier 2s in the game if you ask me. Like Spider Pill is random, but Flamingo is just consistent stats. And I think it's almost always worth taking on turns 3 and 4. White Tiger, instant level 3s. The only problem is it's hard to get its attack to actually be higher than like a Leopard or something like that. But it's so good for like summon teams. It just instantly makes them so good. And you can level it up, or you can go like Parrot White Tiger. It's kind of crazy the teams that you can get with White Tiger. Just instantly become so broken just like that. Alpaca. Level 2 Alpaca is broken, man. Like, you just instantly are able to get level 2s. You can buy, sell them. That's only 1 gold if you buy, sell that level 2. If you go with, like, chicken scaling, then suddenly you're just able to get instant level 2 leopards out there, instant level 2 tigers. Just kind of crazy. And if you do go chickens and get them to 50/50, it's like a requirement to have an alpaca in there. So you're able to just get those units to level 2 instantly. Monkey, great scaler. +2/+3 to a specific target. Only problem is you have to put it in the front, and that can be countered. And like if you have something with melon, you get that melon popped really easily. It can kind of be a problem sometimes, but if you're playing like arena or like versus lobbies, you don't really have to worry about that. So, you know, overall just a good scaler. Stegosaurus, just instant tempo. One of the best tier 6s to just put in your team. Just able to get just instant stats on whatever you want. You can go like White Tiger, Leopard with Stegosaurus or something. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't really work because the Stegosaurus is at end of turn. But like Stegosaurus Leopard, Stegosaurus Octo, just so good. I mean, it's kind of unfair, but it really is just a really good tier 6. I feel like I keep saying the same things, but again, S tier for a reason. Penguin, it got nerfed, and so it's no longer the best in the game. I think it's pretty significant, especially in like versus lobbies, because it's just random. Like if you have 4 level 2s, it just buffs 3 of them at random, and that is pretty frustrating. It no longer can buff everything on your team. Like if you ran double Penguin, it was just pretty nasty, but like now it's good, it's solid, but I mean it's not gonna just like win you the game if you just get Penguin. Seal is an amazing scaler. Like, food builds can be surprisingly just OP. You can scale so fast. I mean, I said it earlier with Squirrel, but you get Squirrel and, like, Seal. You can get so many stats a turn. It's pretty unbelievable. You can outscale, like, Penguin Monkey pretty easily. Yeah, it's just overall a lot of stats. But it also is wide scaling, so you're not buffing, like, one specific thing usually. You're kind of buffing your entire team. Cat is a great tier 6 scaler. You know, combine it with the food items, it's just a whole bunch of stats, and you're able to get to 50/50 real fast. Clownfish, amazing early game stats. I mean, +2/+2, like even if you just buy, sell a Clownfish, you're getting a pair for 2 gold on turns 5 and 6. If you get like a level 2 clownfish, you're getting +4/+4 to whatever you want. Just able to get really high stats like just instantly. And level 2s are usually pretty common, so it's not too hard to get, especially when you have crow and blobfish in the mix. Lobster just allows for instant pivots. +2/+3 is just so helpful. You go can, you go lobster, suddenly you're getting +5/+4 to just whatever it is, and that's only 6 gold. You can do that like multiple times. You go double lobster, double can, and then suddenly you're getting like 10/10 or whatever it is. I mean, it's unfair how fast you're able to pivot into things with good abilities later on. I honestly think that it could be nerfed. I mean, it's weird that it has the same ability as Turkey, just doesn't work in battle, and it's a tier earlier. But yeah, it's just so good, and I think the top 4 on this list honestly need to be nerfed. I mean, blobfish, I don't know why they made it give an extra +1/+1. That probably did not need to happen, but being able to pill for an extra free apple and the level up, it's cheaper than crow. Like, blobfish pill is 4 gold for a free apple and the level up. Crow's 5 gold for just the chocolate. So it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, sure, it requires a pill, but like, that's not that hard to find in the early game. As a tier 3, it's busted. Dog is just the buy sell epitome of like how good it is, because it has unlimited triggers. You get like, you know, goldfish, you get hamster, you get goat, whatever it is. You can get so many stats a turn. I had a video where I showed going from like almost a base stat dog to 50/50 in 1 turn. It's not fair. Like, it's kind of crazy the things that you can do, and it's a tier 3, so that is very early in the game. And yeah, they should probably revert its stats back to 2/2. I don't know why they decided to buff it to 3/3. That might have been a mistake. Turtle, best unit in the game. You're able to get a tier 6 food on turn 3. How does that make any sense? Or on turn 3. If you like pill spider, get early turtle. It's just like, it's such a good food item that you're able to get so early and just keep the entire game. It's like, I don't think you're really supposed to keep tier 1s and tier 2s the entire game, but because of turtle, it just makes it so like you just want to keep those things because you have the best food option available so early. And I think it probably could be a tier 4. I think that's the way to change it. But yeah, that's my opinion on this tier list. Again, there's going to be a lot of things that are wrong. You can feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm sure people have different experiences with a lot of these pets. Maybe you've made some of these bad units really work out. Maybe like you've tried out some of these good units and it's just failed you. I mean, it's hard to experience every single animal in this game. Like, the best thing is probably achievement hunting, but even then it's kind of weird and just messed up. Like, specifically, you're just going for level 3 and not trying to use it efficiently. So yeah, it's a lot of pets. People are going to have different opinions, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see. And yeah, thanks for watching. See ya.